Okay, can you see my screen? Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm going to talk about the performance of lignocellulosic crops in rotation with food crops. This work is financed by the BCool project, H2020 financed project, called Brazil-EU Cooperation for Development of Advanced Lignocellulosic Biofuels. So I want to go quickly on the background because we already seen in the previous session that the demanding target are coming. So in 2030 and in 2050, we shall really boost the production of advanced biofuels, and 20 times increase is expected from the agricultural sector. So we need to identify suitable crops, even annual crop, as said in the Renewable Energy Directive 2 in Annex 9, such as cover crop and crop that can be eligible to be used as feedstock for advanced biofuels. Of course, they should not compete with the food crops. So these lignocellulosic biomass should have some characteristics that are to be high biomass yielding, have low input of cultivation, be sustainable. Of course, they should have specific biomass characteristics that are acceptable for the conversion processes. So the rationale behind this work is to modify the traditional food crop rotation that we have in temperate climates of Europe. So I'm talking about the North Italy, south of France, Spain, and other countries, and to try to intensify, without competing with the food crops, cultivating energy crop and legumes, so to build a new integrated crop rotation, and in order to do not threaten the food security, and at the same time to increase the production of biomass per unit of land. So at first we need to identify which crops we can use for this task. We selected 4 crops. In this slide, you will see 2 of them. The first one is sun hemp. That is an Crotalaria juncea, originated from India. Is a C3 crops, legume, with the N-fixing ability, and can suppress weed and some soil-borne disease. Usually the yield goes from 10 to 15 megagrams per hectare of dry biomass. Then there is a biomass sorghum, originated from Africa. Is a C4, so very efficient in the photosynthetic pathway. Is a cereal, of course, so is well known from the farmers of the area. Is drought resistant, salinity resistance, has a really deep rooting system, so it has also a high water use efficiency. That is very important. The yields goes between 20 to 30 megagrams per hectare. All this crop I'm introducing are annual crop, warm season, that we grow in Italy, and then I will show you the experimental design and so on. 2 of them, the last 2 are hemp and canaf. Hemp is considered originated from Central Asia. It is a good crop for cereal, can suppress weed and also some soil-borne disease. It has got good biomass yields, up to 20 tons per hectare on dry basis. Whereas canaf has the ability to reduce weeds and control some soybean stunt nematode. It is also drought resistance, and the yield are more or less similar to hemp, so up to 20 tons per hectare of dry weight. So the objectives of this work I'm presenting are to evaluate the biomass yield of these 4 dedicated lignocellulosic crops, to advanced biofuels and also the quality of this biomass. And then to assess what is the effect of the introduction of this crop into existing cropping system. So what is the rotational effect in the short term of this crop on the production of a subsequent food crop, winter cereal in this case. So the field experiment is an RCBD with 4 reps. The experiment was carried out in Cadriano, Bologna, at the experimental station of the University of Bologna. And you can see a drone picture of the field with the 4 dedicated lignocellulosic crop that we selected that were growing side by side in the summer of 2018. This is the crop sequence that we established, as I said, in 2018. So you will see in the green rectangles all the lignocellulosic crop. So sun hemp, sorghum, canaf, and hemp. And then in the red rectangles, the wheat, so the following food crop that was sown after the harvest of the lignocellulosic crop. This lignocellulosic crop, as I said, were planted more or less at the same time, with a difference of about 2 weeks, depending on the optimal temperature of the soil for the sowing. So more or less at the end of April, beginning of May 2018. Then they were harvested at the end of September, with the exception for hemp that was harvested in the second half of August. And then we went to ahead with the sowing of wheat that was harvested in the following year, the 2nd of July. Here we can see a picture of the harvesting of the dedicated crop to advanced biofuels. As you can see, the plots were pretty big, so we wanted to keep the experiment at a field scale, so not with a small plot managed by hand. Everything was carried out as it was a farmer scale trial. You can see, for example, that we used different machinery to harvest, and then we performed we went on with the field drying phase and baling, and then we weighted the biomass. These are the results outcoming from the biomass yield of these 4 different crops. As we can see, biomass sorghum was the highest yielding crop, over 30 megagrams per hectare, followed by hemp, then sun hemp and canaf. And then we separated the biomass components of this crop into stems and leaves. We did it because we know that this is important for the quality of the feedstock. We know that leaves have a generally high ash content and mineral content. So we wanted to have a full characterization of the biomass. And as we can see, of course, biomass sorghum again was with the continuous trend line. You can see it reached the highest stems yield and the lowest leaves yield compared to the other 3 dedicated crop. These are the results outcoming from the biomass characterization for the fiber fraction of the cell wall components. So on the left, we see the content of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin for each biomass. We see that sun hemp and hemp had the highest cellulose content, over 40%, whereas biomass sorghum had the highest hemicellulose content and the highest overall cellulose plus hemicellulose content. Remarkably, biomass sorghum has also the lowest lignin content. We know it's an important parameter as well. On the right, there is the ash content of each biomass. Again, biomass sorghum outcomed with the lowest ash content, lower than 5%, whereas all the other 3 biomass were statistically similar and higher than biomass sorghum. These are the results from the mineral composition of the biomass. Again, we can say that generally biomass sorghum and hemp have the general lowest and highest mineral concentration respectively. For example, we can see that for calcium, it was highest for hemp and lowest for biomass sorghum. Again, iron, again, potassium and sulfur. Sun-hemp and Kenaf show intermediate values between hemp and biomass sorghum. And these are the results of outcoming from the effect of this, the rotational effect of this dedicated crop on the following wheat. So we can see from the figure that the wheat grain production in the blue histogram was not affected by the cultivation of the dedicated crop. Whereas we can see differences in the wheat straw. The wheat straw was different. For example, in the rotation 3, so the Kenaf wheat rotation, we saw a reduction in the wheat straw production per unit of land. So concluding, we can say that biomass sorghum yielded the highest biomass of the lot, up to 31 tons per hectare, followed by hemp, sun-hemp, and Kenaf. Furthermore, it showed sorghum showed the best suited feedstock characteristic of the lot because it had the lowest ash content, lowest lignin, and general lowest mineral content, and also the highest hemicellulose content. We can say so that sun-hemp, Kenaf, and hemp might be more suitable for a biochemical conversion pathway rather than thermochemical that possibly can be applied to biomass sorghum. And finally, the grain production of the wheat following this dedicated crop was not affected, but what was affected is the Kenaf wheat straw that resulted lower by 3.5 tons per hectare compared to the straw that was produced by hemp, by the hemp wheat rotation and the sun-hemp wheat rotation. Thanks for attention, and I'm ready for questions. Thank you very much.